We're happy to bring on a journalist for sale today, Dr. Ivan Katchanovski. He's a Ukrainian professor who is one of the most cited political scientists on Ukraine. He was born in Western Ukraine and has studied politics and conflicts in Ukraine extensively. He has been featured in a number of various outlets such as The Nation, Huffington Post, Jacobin, Consortium News, Counterpunch, The Gray Zone, and Truth Out, all ones that we love here at SharePost. He has also published 4 books, has 3 upcoming books, and has been featured in 20 peer-reviewed journal articles, 12 book chapters. Dr. Katchanovski has also held research positions at Harvard, the University of Toronto, and the Kluge Center at the Library of Congress. And we want to talk about today about Maidan, the revolution in Ukraine, in Kiev in 2014, and the origins, since we are now 2 years into the Russian-Ukraine war, and the mainstream media attention has sort of shifted dramatically away from this conflict, focusing on Gaza and Israel more than anything now. But I think after Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin last week or 2 weeks ago, which has garnered hundreds of millions of views, people are once again talking about the issue. So we'd love to get into this.
Yeah, and so Dr. Katchanovski, if you could briefly describe the Maidan massacre, so things like what started it, who was involved, what happened, and what were its results, according to the official narrative. And then, if you could answer in reality, despite what the official narrative says, how many people died, how many people were killed by Berkut police, and how many were killed by far right militias from Maidan controlled buildings, as your research has revealed.
Thank you for the invitation. I studied Maidan massacre for more than 10 years, and I published 3 peer-reviewed journal articles about Maidan massacre. And I have 2 books which would examine Maidan massacre. And these books will be published this year by major Western academic presses. I can say definitely based on my own research, what actually happened during the Maidan and the evidence is beyond any kind of reasonable doubt. This is quite unprecedented to see such amount of evidence from different sources publicly available, but there is no kind of just media coverage of them. And because the dominant narrative, which was promoted from the start of Maidan massacre by the Western media, by Western governments, and by the Ukrainian government which came to power as a result of this massacre, and also by Ukrainian media, with just some notable exceptions, was that this mass murder was conducted by the government forces of the former President Yanukovych on his orders, specifically to kill unarmed Maidan protesters, specifically to suppress this popular mass protest against the government, which was regarded as pro-Russian government. And this narrative is still perpetrated and still propagated by the Western media, including the New York Times and all other major media, Washington Post and Guardian and so on. Even so, they kind of I think they know exactly what happened, but they don't want to report this for political reasons because the evidence is just overwhelming. And according to the verdict, which was issued recently in October of last year by the Ukrainian trial of a jury and the judges, this massacre led to the murder of 4 Berkut policemen and wounding of more than 60 police officers and internal troops members on the Maidan on February 20th, and killings of 49 Maidan protesters or activists, and wounding of 172 of Maidan activists during this Maidan massacre. And actually, even if you look into official verdict, which has again received almost no coverage, if you look into a text of this verdict, which is now has almost 1 million words, which is very long, and which I summarized and published in a translation also on my website, academic website, with specific references to what they found concerning Maidan snipers. And this verdict basically stated that 13 Maidan protesters were killed and 29 were wounded by unknown snipers, or that involvement of the Berkut police and other law enforcement agencies in the matter cannot be proven because of lack of evidence, and that they cannot exclude that they were shot by other snipers. Specifically, this verdict mentioned that at least 6 Maidan protesters were killed from the Hotel Ukraina, which the verdict stated explicitly was controlled not by the government forces or law enforcement agencies, but was controlled by Maidan activists. So they stated in the verdict that at least 6 protesters were killed from the Hotel Ukraina, which was under Maidan control, and also from other Maidan control locations, and there is no evidence of involvement of the Berkut police in their matter. And in addition to this, official investigation determines that about half of all wounded protesters, about half of 172 protesters were wounded from locations which were not controlled by the Berkut police or other government forces. And they did not charge anybody. And this is quite unprecedented because you have now official trial in Ukraine and official investigation in Ukraine, which are not independent. They are basically very heavily dependent and controlled to various extent by the executive, by basically presidential administration of Zelensky and previous presidential administrations, which were led by the Maidan opposition. And this law enforcement agencies and the justice system, basically in Ukraine, now officially admitted that most Maidan protesters were shot not by the Berkut police, but by unknown snipers who were located in the areas which were not controlled by the government forces, which means basically de facto admission that they were killed and wounded by snipers who were located in the Maidan control areas, because there was no evidence of any other force present during the Maidan, and this was also officially stated in the verdict, which stated that according to investigation which was conducted, they did not find any evidence of Russian snipers present or involved in the Maidan massacre. And today, even again, official government investigation stated the same, that there was no involvement of Russian snipers or agents in this Maidan massacre. They were not there were no Russian snipers and so on, or any agents involved in this massacre of the Maidan protesters and the police. So now you have such kind of evidence which contradicts basically official evidence, official admission contradicts all this narrative which was promoted by the major Western media, by Western politicians, by Western governments, and there is again total silence about this. There are no media reports, nothing basically. Even so, by publications, academic publications, which presented all this evidence from the start, actually from 2014, when I presented first version of my study of Maidan massacre. They found that this Maidan massacre was conducted, according to my research and according to the evidence, this Maidan massacre was conducted by elements of far-right Maidan opposition and oligarchic opposition, specifically to blame the government forces and to overthrow the government, which was led by Yanukovych, but was democratically elected. And evidence is overwhelming because even if you look into testimonies of the Maidan protesters who were wounded, and with wounding of whom the Maidan with wounding of whom the government investigation in Ukraine charged the police, Berkut police. Actually, absolute majority of them testified that they were shot not by the police, contrary to the official investigation, but they were shot by snipers who were located in the Hotel Ukraina, in other Maidan control locations, or that they witnessed snipers there. And this is, I think, also very important because official investigation denied that there were any such snipers, and they did not investigate such snipers. Even so, you have testimonies of Maidan protesters who were wounded who testified about this. Again, no investigation. There are like several hundred eyewitnesses who testified against the same about Maidan snipers. You have admissions by 14 self-admitted snipers who said that they were members of Maidan sniper groups and targeted and shot the police, or that they shot also Maidan protesters. Again, no investigation, nothing, and no media reports, with just few notable exceptions. In addition to this, there were also videos of such snipers in the Hotel Ukraina, in other locations, and shooting by them. And these videos were by CNN, for instance, by other major media like BBC, by Ukrainian television channel ICTV, and so on. Again, with the exception of BBC News, this was not reported at all. So again, even so, there are such videos, and I have the videos from CNN. I have also video which was never reported and never broadcast, and there are also kind of videos from which I found on social media, which also shows such snipers in Hotel Ukraina, and that they were Maidan snipers and shooting from this building, which was controlled by the Maidan opposition. There are also testimonies of prosecution witnesses, even at the Maidan massacre trial, who testified the same about Maidan snipers. You have testimonies of government snipers who testified that they were deployed to Maidan area only specifically after the shooting started, and their task was not to shoot Maidan protesters. They testified that they actually had order to locate snipers who were shooting Maidan protesters and the police. And they stated when they arrived actually to the Maidan massacre area, the shooting stopped, almost completely stopped. And the Maidan massacre trial decision also stated explicitly that there was no evidence of any order from Yanukovych or from his ministers to massacre Maidan protesters. And this again never reported. This is complete blackout of this information. And in addition to this, there are like ballistic examinations by government experts, which showed that many protesters were killed and wounded from Maidan controlled areas, from Hotel Ukraina and other locations. There are medical forensic examinations which stated the same, that protesters were shot in the back from the side, from very steep location. And there are also like videos, synchronized videos, which show that Berkut police were shooting at the time when protesters were not killed and wounded. So this means they were shooting in other locations. They were shooting in the ground as a warning shots, or they were shooting in in various objects in the Hotel Ukraina specifically, because of this was location of Maidan snipers. So this is evidence which is beyond any kind of reasonable doubt, states now that that Maidan protesters and the police were shot by snipers who were located in the Maidan control areas, and these snipers were Maidan snipers. So this is now, I think, very clear. But again, there is almost total blackout of this information in the media, and also no government admissions, no investigation.
Just to be clear, so 13 protesters were killed by snipers in Maidan controlled areas, confirmed by your studies, right? And 49 protesters were killed total?
No, I think according to my research, so this was admission by the Maidan massacre trial and investigation that 14 protesters were killed not by the Berkut, but by other snipers in areas who were located in not under government control, but were controlled by Maidan forces. And they admitted also that majority of wounded protesters were also shot by not by Berkut police or government forces, but by unknown snipers who they did not investigate, because this is obviously would be Maidan snipers. But my own research shows that at least absolute majority of Maidan protesters were killed and wounded by Maidan snipers located in Maidan controlled areas. There are just some cases, like few cases of killed protesters and some cases of wounded protesters in which there is no evidence. For instance, there are no videos, there are no kind of testimonies about who was shooting them. There are no medical examinations to determine who shot them, from which direction, or evidence is contradictory. But in absolute majority of cases which I mentioned, including like medical examinations, including testimonies, witness testimonies, it's very clear that there were at least absolute majority of Maidan protesters were killed and wounded by snipers who were Maidan snipers located in Maidan controlled areas, contrary to the dominant narrative and contrary to the kind of official denials about existence of such snipers, because they regard this as conspiracy theory, even so they are basically admitted that at least majority of Maidan protesters were shot by snipers located in areas which are not controlled by government forces.
So is there any evidence that the Berkut police killed any protesters?
There are like in some cases which I look, there is evidence, for instance, which cannot exclude that protesters were killed by Berkut shooting, for instance, as a result of ricochet from the ground, for instance, or that these protesters were killed or wounded in crossfire. So it's not possible to exclude this because, for instance, you have one case in which there are two gunshots at the same time within 1 second with totally different sound. So this means they were shot from these gunshots were from very different directions. And at the same time, these two gunshots coincide with killing of one of the Maidan protesters near Hotel Ukraina, who was killed. And at the same time, there is a Polish video, which shows that Berkut policeman was shooting in the direction of this protester, but at the ground kind of before him. So the only way that this protester could have been shot by the police was that he was killed as a result of ricochet from the ground, basically, because gunshots were, again, this was very short distance between this policeman and this protester, and the only way that this protester could have been killed was as a result of ricochet. And official government investigations of verdict stated that there were like 4 protesters killed as a result of indiscriminate fire, specifically ricochets when shooting by the police. But at the same time, there was another gunshot at the same time, which would mean that the same protester could have been shot from a very high ground, because his wound was, again, a very steep wound. So this means he could have been shot from behind, for instance, or from any other location, from the Hotel Ukraina, because other protesters at the same area at the same time were killed by snipers located in the Hotel Ukraina. So this is just one example. So I'm not certain for sure, actually. I'm not ballistic expert. Again, I'm not a forensic expert to determine precisely, because I cannot do such an investigation. But government investigation never used ballistic experts to determine actually who shot this protester and all other protesters. And this is quite unbelievable, because for 10 years the government investigation did not use ballistic experts and to determine actually shots from which direction shots were fired. And this is, I think, very kind of revealing that this can happen, because Maidan massacre trial specifically gave order to the investigation, to the prosecution office in Ukraine, to use ballistic experts, government ballistic experts, to determine from which locations Maidan protesters were killed. And they specifically named the areas which are controlled not only by the police, but buildings which were controlled by the government forces, which were controlled by the Maidan forces, like Hotel Ukraina, and which I identified in my investigation as a location of Maidan snipers. And prosecution basically never did this, never did any kind of ballistic examinations by ballistic experts, and they cited like totally kind of implausible explanations for this. They said, for instance, that there was no time for students who were like used as witnesses in these experiments, because students were too busy, like for 2 years, so they cannot attend any of experiments. And actually, one of lawyers from defense lawyers stated during the Maidan massacre trial that actually these experiments were started, and immediately after the first protester was identified by this expert government expert that he was shot from the Hotel Ukraina. The official prosecution investigation stopped all these experiments, and this is a reason why they did not contact them. So this is just clear, kind of that this is like most basic stuff which needs to be done by investigation, and they never did this because obviously it's very easy to just basically to claim that something happened, that protesters were shot, but the basic stuff is to show that protesters were killed from from which area, from which location, using ballistic experts was never done. And this was mentioned by the Maidan massacre trial verdict, that this was very simple things to do, but this was never done by official investigation. And instead, you have actually government investigation. They hired kind of how to say, so-called group of anonymous group of volunteers, which actually was paid by Prosecution General Office of Ukraine, and they hired New York City company, architecture company, to model, to create a 3D model of shooting of 3 protesters who were killed. And this model was used, basically, was publicized by New York Times as clear evidence that Maidan protesters were shot by the Berkut police. Even so, the model which was created was totally false, because it misrepresented locations of bullets, locations of wounds of this Maidan protesters, by shifting them, like to fit them to location of Berkut, because wounds were very steep and from the side location, but again they were moved to the front and made nearly horizontal, specifically to match location of Berkut on the ground. And this, again, investigation, this model was paid by Soros Foundation in Ukraine, and this was presented by the media as definite evidence that these Maidan protesters were shot, but it was financed by Prosecution General Office, basically not financed, but it was ordered by Prosecution General Office instead of actually doing what they're supposed to do, and use kind of ballistic experts. So they just use architecture company instead of ballistic experts to do this basic stuff. And even when this evidence was kind of introduced to the Maidan massacre trial, it was introduced just for 1 day, but never examined, because Maidan lawyers refused to examine this evidence. So they just presented this evidence in which they kind of was conducted this model, which was created by New York architecture company, but never used this as evidence during the trial. So they basically abandoned their own evidence, and this is just again very clear that this evidence was abandoned because and not used by the Maidan victims' lawyers, because
Sorry, how did they abandon the evidence exactly? I misheard you there. How did they abandon it?
So they introduced this to the trial. Basically, they said we have evidence from this New York architecture company, which they ordered, basically using experts who were architecture experts, to show that Maidan protesters were shot from Berkut locations. There was like 3D model created, which is also available online. And then they refused to basically examine this evidence during the trial. So they just gave the trial this evidence, but they refused to kind of examine this, to present this evidence. So they said that such evidence exists, but then they refused to examine this evidence. And this was mentioned during the verdict. In the verdict, that they stated that basically they wasted time and kind of they wasted time of the judges and the jury and lawyers, specifically because they introduced this evidence, want to be examined during the trial, but they never examined this. They never presented this evidence. So this is like clear sign and clear kind of.
But it was used in the government investigation, right? The 3D model?
No, it was not used by government investigation. It was just this, how to say, this model was kind of officially created on request of Maidan lawyers, Maidan victims' lawyers for this trial.
So this evidence was more so used by the media than the official government investigation in Ukraine. It was used by media rather than them.
Yes, it was used specifically by New York Times to publish, which published this article saying this is like definite evidence which shows that Maidan protesters were killed by Berkut, not by any snipers. There was conspiracy theories. There were snipers located in any areas, and even the kind of head of this New York architecture company stated that there was evidence of such snipers because protesters were shot in the back, other protesters were shot in the back again, but it was never mentioned by New York Times and any other media. But this investigation, which this CD model actually was was commissioned and done with help of a volunteer group, which was called Anonymous Volunteer Group in Ukraine. But actually, this group was financed by and was working basically for government investigation. So this is like basically government prosecution office. They anonymously funded a group which was involved in this helping creating this 3D model, specifically to misrepresent evidence of Maidan massacre by using this New York architecture company to to create this media perception that they determined that Maidan protesters were killed from locations which would match location of Berkut police, but in fact this was opposite, and they never introduced this. They never used this evidence during the trial. Even so, they introduced this. Again, we are Maidan victims' lawyers. So this is again, and they never did what they're supposed to do actually, and what was basic, the most basic stuff to do is to use ballistic experts and to show just basically do reconstruction with ballistic experts to determine from which locations Maidan protesters were killed, because there are videos of the moment in which moment of killing of most of Maidan protesters. There are like medical examinations which can determine very precisely from which actual location, from which position Maidan protesters were killed, and in at least 12 such cases, ballistic experts on their own determined that Maidan protesters were killed from Hotel Ukraina and other Maidan control locations. But official investigation never ordered this, and they never conducted such examinations, ballistic examinations, to determine bullet trajectories which killed and wounded Maidan protesters in absolute majority of cases, and they did not do this again. And for this reason, it's very clear that this was the reason why they did not do this, because it would immediately show that these protesters were killed and wounded from Hotel Ukraina and other locations which were controlled by Maidan protesters and not by government police.
And who are these actors that are kind of controlling the stuff behind the scenes that make sure that these ballistic reports don't get done, or that they are delayed? Or now there's also this memorial going up right in Maidan that's going to impede the sort of evidence that is there. Like, what are the politics behind all of that, and who are these people that are kind of making sure that this kind of evidence does not get produced more so?
I think this is like this is done obviously not by on the initiative of local prosecutors who are in charge of this investigation, is because this is controlled by the politicians in UK who gave such orders basically to investigation, to what to do and what to find and what not to find. And specifically, actually, when this investigation started in 2014, the head of investigation group for Prosecutor General Office of Ukraine was selected by one of Maidan politicians who was accused of being one of the organizers of Maidan massacre. And there was video in which this Maidan opposition leader at the time was caught by Maidan protesters evacuating one of the Maidan snipers from the area of Maidan massacre. And this was never investigation. This was never investigated, and he actually became head of presidential administration after the Maidan, and he basically was involved in selection of prosecutor who led official investigation of Maidan massacre until Zelensky was elected in 2019.
Is this the same guy that was in the 11th story room where that sniper was from? Is that who you're referring to, or this is someone else?
No, this is the same. This is different. This is oligarchic politician who actually was just arrested. He was he was arrested a few times on other charges, and he is now also charged with embezzlement of money because he accused of very large scale corruption for weapons procurement by the Ukraine during this by his companies during the Russia-Ukraine war, and Zelensky called him a criminal when he was elected, and the New York Times ran a very big story about him as well. But again, there was no investigation about his involvement in the Maidan massacre, so this is quite revealing as well. And he was the one actually who put a kind of entire kind of investigation group in charge of investigating kind of this massacre. So obviously they would not investigate him or other associates. And this is quite revealing, because this information was published by Ukrainian journalists who was actually very pro-Maidan journalist, and he was head of civic group at the Prosecutor General Office. So he had access to such information, and he published this information. Again, no reaction, no media reports, nothing, and kind of this is quite revealing. And when Zelensky came to power, a new Prosecutor General who kind of Ukraine, who was appointed by Zelensky, stated that a lot of documents and a lot of evidence from the Maidan massacre just disappeared, including documents from investigation. So they never found such evidence, and again, nobody was punished. There were no investigations, nothing, and a lot of bullets actually disappeared, totally disappeared from the Maidan investigation. Again, no investigation, nothing, and in addition to this, bullets appeared. Some bullet fragments appeared without any trace and without any evidence. And this is very important because
so some disappeared and then others appeared.
Yes, exactly. And this was also confirmed by this verdict, because they stated that they based their decision that Berkut police was responsible for murder of 35 Maidan protesters and wounding of 49 Maidan protesters, only based on forensic examination of bullets, which was conducted in 2019, and which overturned results of 40 other forensic ballistic examinations of bullets, including the one which was conducted using automatic computer-based system, and which did not match any bullets from the Berkut police to bullets which were extracted from bodies of killed protesters. But suddenly, in 4 years afterwards, in 5 years, you have a new examination which became a basis for basically for the verdict, saying that the Berkut police was responsible for murder of these Maidan protesters. Even so, like all the other evidence, like testimonies of these protesters who witnessed this, wounded protesters would contradict this, ballistic examinations would contradict this, medical examinations would contradict this, and even videos which were presented also by prosecution actually show that, for instance, one of protesters who was wounded and who also testifies that he was shot initially from Hotel Ukraina, and forensic ballistic expert that also determined that he was shot from Hotel Ukraina, not by Maidan, not from Berkut position. Actually, video shows that a Berkut policeman who was charged with shooting of this Maidan protesters actually was not shooting at the time when this protester was wounded. And there is a video which I posted on my website, again, on my academic website, which mentioned also in my studies, which shows that at the time when this protester was wounded on the bridge, like pedestrian bridge on Maidan, other protesters were filmed pointing to Hotel Ukraina and saying that there are snipers shooting Maidan protesters on the same area of the bridge. And he was wounded. He was kind of protecting himself from being shot from Hotel Ukraina snipers. And again, all Maidan massacre trial kind of dismissed all this evidence. His testimony, his admission, forensic examination expert stated these videos and so on, and they basically stated that the only evidence which they used was that the bullet which was extracted from this wounded protester would match bullet which from Kalashnikov rifle of one of the Berkut policemen who was charged with Maidan massacre of Maidan protesters, and who was actually extradited to Donbass separatists, and who actually was convicted in absentia based on this evidence. So there was only one match between bullets which were extracted from Maidan protesters who were killed or wounded to bullets which were considered to be bullets of used by Berkut police. And in this case, in this single match video shows that this policeman, who also was identified by official investigation, did not even was shooting. He was just sitting behind a barricade, and his Kalashnikov was pointing to the sky, like he was just hiding from Maidan snipers himself. And so this is like quite unbelievable, because you have a policeman actually who is accused based on evidence which kind of this ballistic examination, but all other evidence, including video, shows that he did not shoot this wounded protester. And the same forensic examination, which was, I mentioned, kind of which was basis for saying that Berkeley policemen were responsible for a murder of 35 Maidan protesters. Actually, this verdict also stated that they dismiss 2 bullet fragments which were found without any trace, and which match another killed protester to Berkut Kalashnikov bullet, because these bullet fragments appeared without any trace. So this is like clear evidence that there was tampering of evidence, again, to frame Berkut policemen, because you can kind of, and again, no investigation, nothing, and now a lot of bullets, as I mentioned, disappeared without any trace. You have trees which contain bullets also were cut. And the area of Maidan massacre now is significantly changed, because a lot of evidence disappeared, and there is now a plan, as was mentioned, to totally change the landscape of the Maidan massacre area by building a park and monument, again, to the Maidan massacre, which would prevent any kind of possibility of conducting any kind of investigation to determine directions from which Maidan protesters were killed. So for more than 10 years, they never did this again, and there is no evidence that they are interested in doing this. And again, nobody cares, nobody is interested in doing this. And this is quite unprecedented, because this is quite unbelievable that this can be done so openly and so brazenly, basically without any kind of concern by anybody.
So just to get into, I guess, the motivations of this, could you maybe briefly touch on who these Maidan protesters are in terms of, the connections with far-right elements, or who they were working with in terms of funding and financial support from Western NGOs, and kind of this whole picture of the reasons behind why this false flag was conducted, and the reasons why it needed to look the way it did.
And also, if I can add one thing, just specifically, if any of the politicians that were working with these far-right elements were being backed at all by Western interests, like NGOs or USAID or things like that.
Yes, I think there were just, I can say, based on my research and based on publicly available evidence, including admissions of members of sniper groups in the media and social media, that there were at least 2 groups of Maidan snipers, and likely more. I found that such snipers were located in more than 20 buildings during the Maidan massacre, which were controlled by the Maidan forces. And one group was based in the Music Conservatory, and later was filmed in the Hotel Ukraina during the Maidan massacre. And this group was also identified as in the verdict of the Maidan massacre trial in the Hotel Ukraina and the Music Conservatory during the Maidan massacre. So this group was led by a kind of member of parliament who became actually far-right activist, who became member of Ukrainian parliament after Maidan, after the Maidan massacre. And he was the one actually who actually was in charge of this group. He was commander of this group, and he also kind of stated in official Ukrainian media investigations that he cannot talk about his own involvement in the Maidan massacre or what happened during the Maidan massacre, because Ukrainians are not yet ready to know what happened, not ready yet to accept what happened, and to not know kind of what happened during Maidan massacre. And again, he was never investigated. Even so, he is filmed basically shooting in the Berkut, his group members admitted that they shot policemen and openly, and one of them stated this in the media. that he killed 2 policemen. There are videos which show that they are shooting policemen from Music Conservatory from Maidan stage, but they are never investigated again. And this is quite unbelievable. Even so, this member of this group admitted, who also was far-right, later became a head of a far-right right sector battalion and was involved in Donbass war. Actually, he admitted publicly in the media, Ukrainian media, and that he killed 2 Berkut policemen. And again, only afterwards he was charged by the prosecutor general office. But after Maidan prosecutor, who was actually head of Maidan prosecutor general office, intervened and changed charges specifically to lesser charges, basically not murder, but some kind of attempted murder. And this Maidan activist was released, and he basically disappeared without any trace. And according to information by Ukrainian journalists, he was kind of led via Ukrainian border to other countries, specifically to escape any persecution. So this is what happened. So they never investigated people who were responsible for this, but the evidence is very clear that this group was involved in the Maidan massacre.
And what party was this politician part of, and what was his name?
So he's his name is Parasyuk, and he actually was a member of Congress of Ukrainian Nationalists in 1990s. So there are like videos. So he was a member of this Congress of Ukrainian Nationalists, which is a Ukrainian party which was created by a former organization of Ukrainian Nationalist Party, which was created by Stepan Bandera, basically, and this party, which was far-right party, a semi-fascist party, it's collaborated with Nazi Germany, and many of its members and leaders then moved to the West, to the United States and other Western countries. And after Ukrainian independence, they wife of one of the leaders of OUN created this Congress of Ukrainian Nationalists, basically far-right party, which also had armed group, which was this member was this activist who actually led this Maidan group of Maidan snipers, was actually a member of in the 1990s, and the same company of the snipers, which was led by this far-right Maidan activists, included also at least 2 members of Svoboda Party, because the list of members of this.
Which members were those?
This is like far-right Svoboda Party, which again. And because
what were their names is what I meant. Yeah.
I think I don't remember their names because just one member who admitted publicly in the Ukrainian media that he shot Maidan protesters and was a member of became commander of a right sector battalion, far-right battalion after the Maidan massacre. His name was Ivan Bubenchik. So again, there was an article in Foreign Affairs about him I think several years ago, that he killed for Maidan, basically article, and he fled basically Ukraine, and he was never persecuted for this investigation. Even so, investigation charged him with murder of 2 policemen, and later attempted murder of the same 2 policemen again. So you have other members. So all members of this group are publicly known because Ukrainian media published their names. Because this was leaked from Ukrainian investigation, but they never investigated. So again, the head of this group, which I mentioned, became a member of Ukrainian parliament, and now he is fighting he was fighting in the Russia-Ukraine war. Again, he never investigated for this massacre, and he specifically said that he was invited by prosecutor general office, but he declined to do this again. So this is quite unprecedented, and so you have other members of the same company of Maidan snipers admitted that they shot police. One of them did this in BBC interview, which was published and which was broadcast in 2015. And again, no investigation was done. In addition to this group of far-right snipers, and they are filming Hotel Ukraina, shooting from the windows of Hotel Ukraina into direction of Maidan protesters. They are filmed with Kalashnikov type of weapons, running into Hotel Ukraina. So they are filmed shooting from. Actually, CNN filmed this far-right leader and members of his company of snipers walking next to Maidan stage in front of CNN television journalists who was filming live, and these armed snipers, they would walk near a CNN journalist who was just kind of filming live, and kind of in the morning of February 20th, and they just move literally next to him, in front of him, with hunting weapons, and later one of them was shown just checking Kalashnikov assault rifles and shooting into, and they were later and later you can hear shooting from this area. So by kind of the same members of the same group, and you have police and internal troops members killed at the same time, so according to official investigation. So, but CNN never broadcast this video. So I got this video as a raw footage from CNN. They never showed this video. Even so, they had snipers again shooting, far snipers shooting police, and this is what what led to Maidan massacre afterwards again. But they never kind of released this footage. And CNN also had footage of the same group inside of Hotel Ukraina shooting from, again, introduction of Maidan protesters, but again, they never released this video. But you can hear voices in Ukrainian saying that they want to change shooting positions. They were telling CNN journalists to move away from window because they wanted to shoot from that window again. And this was Hotel Ukraina, the same 11th floor, and this floor. On the same floor, at almost the same time, just a few minutes afterwards, you have a BBC television crew would film again a sniper shooting into BBC television crew and Ukrainian Maidan protesters. And this room on 11th floor, according to official Ukrainian government investigation, was occupied at that time by one of the leaders of far-right Svoboda party. And according to Ukrainian journalist who was streaming from the same floor, 11th floor of Hotel Ukraina, he saw snipers from this group who were armed with Kalashnikov assault rifles, with hunting rifles, and he said that they were Maidan protesters, they were kind of not any government forces. So this is quite unbelievable because they were never investigated. An official investigation denied that there were any snipers in the Hotel Ukraina. Even so, you have videos, you have testimonies, and even now, official verdict of Maidan massacre trial stated that the BBC video, which shows this Maidan sniper shooting into BBC television crew and Maidan protesters, actually shows that this was targeted shooting from Maidan control Hotel Ukraina. And again, no media reports, no BBC did not report this. They never reported that, or any other major Western media never reported that this window, Hotel Ukraina room, in which you have location of Maidan snipers shooting into BBC and Maidan protesters, was occupied by far-right Svoboda leader. And this is also very important because if you look into just history of this, and I mentioned this in my studies, there were two leaders of far-right Svoboda party who stated in Ukrainian interviews, in separate Ukrainian interviews, two Ukrainian journalists who were pro-Maidan journalists and published a book in Ukrainian language, which was called Maidan Secret Files. And in their interviews, two far-right leaders of Svoboda party, one of whom was Oleg Ternibok, who was head of this far-right Svoboda party and one of the leaders of Maidan Maidan movement during the Maidan massacre, and another was deputy head of the Ukrainian parliament, who was also from Svoboda party. So these two leaders of Maidan opposition and far-right Svoboda party stated in their separate interviews to Ukrainian journalists, and these interviews are published. They stated that a few weeks before Maidan massacre, they met, along with other Maidan leaders, they met with a representative from Western country, from some kind of Western representative. They did not say who was this representative, but I think what they said was very important because they stated that they had discussion with this Western representative what it would take for Western governments to change their policy and stop recognizing the Yanukovych government. And these discussions happened after first few protesters were killed. and according to the evidence, they were killed also by Maidan opposition in forced flag operation. And so then they had discussion with Western representative what it would take for Western government to stop recognizing Yanukovych government, specifically because they said that there are already a few protesters killed, and they said, so what the leaders said that Western representative told them a few people killed is not enough. So they asked like how many people would be enough? Like 5 people? No, they said no. Western representative said no, 5 is not enough. 20? No, they said like 20 is not enough. So they said in the end they agreed to 100. If 100 people, if there would be 100 victims on Maidan, then Western governments would change recognition of Yanukovych government, basically stop recognizing Yanukovych government.
And this is, we know that this was what they talked about.
No, this is published in interviews. I have book. This is like a Ukrainian book which is published by 2 Ukrainian journalists. So this interviews with far-right Svoboda leaders, and this is published in Ukrainian. And I mentioned this in my articles in my book. So I have this book. So this is like published interviews from
right. So we know that they discussed this openly.
Yes, this was just in secret meeting of Maidan leadership.
Right, but we know what was said.
Yes, exactly, and this is what happened exactly. Then after
was it John McCain, the representative, or
no? This was later. This was beginning of February or end of January. So I do not know who was this representative, but to basically to say that this representative can say that you can change policy of all Western governments of recognition of Yanukovych, and they would agree that this would require to have 100 victims killed. So this means that this representative to be somebody who would be very powerful and likely from the United States, because you cannot just talk on behalf of all Western governments, basically. And so basically this means you need to have some influence, very strong influence to say this on behalf of U.S. government. And this is actually what happened. Immediately after Maidan massacre, Maidan opposition said that this Maidan victims became heavily handed. So they used specifically heavily handed, 100 protesters killed. This was kind of officially declared. Even so, the number of killed protesters was less than 100, but they needed to include this, so they used immediately 100 to name all the killed protesters, and they include protesters who were just people outside of Kyiv who were just killed for other reasons, or died because of health reasons, specifically to bring number of killed protesters to 100. So this was a very important number, and this is why they call this 100 almost immediately. And immediately after this happened, Maidan massacre happened, U.S. government and other Western governments stopped recognizing Yanukovych government. And in his memoirs, Biden said that he called Yanukovych right after Maidan massacre and told Yanukovych that you need to go and leave Ukraine, not only your presidency, but leave Ukraine, because Biden accused Yanukovych of being responsible for Maidan massacre. Even so, I think it was very clear that this was not the case. And even Biden afterwards, Biden said in his address to Ukrainian parliament, I think in 2016 or 2017, he said that snipers who were located in buildings shot Maidan protesters, and this is now regarded as conspiracy theory, because official investigation denies that there were any snipers in any buildings which were shooting Maidan protesters, and this was said by Biden, and this was said by then President Poroshenko, who said that protesters were also killed from Hotel Ukraina, music conservatory, but this is now became conspiracy theory and never investigated. And this is, I think, very clear that I think because even based on public evidence alone, you can say that the evidence of Maidan snipers is overwhelming. But and for this reason, I think I can say that Western governments at least knew that this massacre was conducted not by government forces, but by snipers located in Maidan control buildings with involvement of far-right and oligarchic elements of Maidan opposition. But for political reasons, they did not reveal this. And I think this may be revealed in the future, as happened like in many other cases, like Iran, coup in 2000, I think in 1954, or other kind of events in which U.S. government played a role. But I don't think this would be revealed any time now, because this is very crucial to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, to the Russia-Ukraine war. So there is no incentive to do this by the U.S. government or any other politicians in Western countries or Western media, such as the New York Times, because media just follows what the government says and not what actually happened on the ground, in spite of all the evidence available.
And just to be specific, so one of the Svoboda leaders that met with this anonymous Western official, where they discussed how many people need to be killed by Yanukovych forces for you guys to stop recognizing the Yanukovych government. One of those people was Ole Tian. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Tyahnybok.
Yes, one of them was him, right?
Yeah.
And he met with John McCain and Senator Chris Murphy when they came to Ukraine, right? And they showed support for him. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. And he was one of the Maidan leaders of Maidan movement, Maidan, yes. And he met with McCain and other U.S. politicians.
Right. And when we say that he's one of the leaders of the Maidan protest, do we know that he had any involvement in the more militant aspects of it, like the paramilitaries and the snipers? Is there any evidence of that, or is that more just inferred?
I cannot, because I rely on publicly available investigation. I'm a political scientist, so I do not do criminal investigations. I'm not able to say who individually was involved in Maidan massacre, because this requires evidence which is not publicly available. But I can say that Svoboda Party, based on my examination, based on my studies, was involved in this massacre, because in addition to what I mentioned, the discussion of the leaders with Western representatives that there will be necessary to have 100 victims for Western government stopping recognizing Yanukovych government. There was also official announcement by Svoboda Party and by Tyahnybok himself on the Maidan stage, and that this Svoboda Party took control and took the Hotel Ukraina under their control and guard. And this was few weeks before the Maidan massacre. And this coincides. This was at the end of January 2014, and this coincides with the meeting with Western representative, concerning this discussion. And in BBC interview, one of Maidan snipers said that also he was recruited by one of Maidan activists, who was a former, I think, security official or military official, become a sniper again at the same time around end of January. And so this is very important, because this means this was prepared in advance. And Svoboda Party officially stated that they had control over Hotel Ukraina, and they
which was one of the buildings that was shooting a lot of the protesters.
Yes, and protesters were shot from this hotel. Like, according even to testimonies of witnesses, now official Maidan massacre trial stated that Maidan protesters were shot and killed and wounded from this hotel, and this is like, how to say this? They use this something. They said this is like a categorical conclusion that there were snipers, that there were shooters located in Hotel Ukraina, and they shot from this hotel. And they specifically mentioned that protesters were killed by these snipers and from the Hotel Ukraina. So this is now beyond any kind of dispute. But again, media would never report this. And according to testimonies, the same actually, and according to videos which I show you in my video appendixes and mentioned in my studies, the same far-right leader and deputy head of Ukrainian parliament was filmed in the Hotel Ukraina during this Maidan massacre, escorting a far-right group of Maidan snipers into Hotel Ukraina, and he was filmed on 14th floor along with the same group of Maidan snipers who were shooting into the direction of Maidan protesters from the window of Hotel Ukraina. And this room was a room which was rented by German public television, public television again. And this public television, German, they filmed entire video of the Maidan massacre, and they never made it public because you have a room. And this was actually leaked as an anonymous video, but this video was cut, and they also removed sound from this video, because sound would immediately show that Maidan protesters were shot not by the Berkut police, but were shot from very close by areas, because you can see very loud sounds of shooting later in the end of the video when the sound miraculously appeared. So this was stated also by Ukrainian journalist who was working for ARD German television, and said that he filmed this video himself. Again, and this video was never released officially by the German television, even so official Ukrainian investigation asked them to release this for Maidan massacre trial, but they never did this. So this again, you have basically journalists who hide this crucial evidence, because this evidence would immediately show that protesters were killed not by some Berkut policemen, but were shot from.
Hi.
So sorry, there was some issue. So this is, I think, video which shows very clearly that times when shooting of protesters do not coincide with times when police were shooting from a police barricade, and this police barricade was shooting again. When you look into bullet holes were located on the second floor of the Hotel Ukraina and upper floors. So this means that they were shooting behind barricade, which was behind very large attacks, and they could not shoot down from this barricade, because so this means that Maidan protesters who were shot, they were in the blind zone from the police, and the police was shooting actually in the second floor, because you have many bullet holes in the second floor and upper floors of Hotel Ukraina, which means they were shooting to Maidan snipers who were shooting again both at the police and Maidan protesters from the Hotel Ukraina. And this is like kind of very clear, because you have also a kind of Belgian television video which shows, and this is again, this video was never broadcast by any media, but a small fragment of this video was shown by the media in all the major countries of the world, like United States and BBC, all the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, France, Ukraine, many times. This was the most famous short video of Maidan massacre, which shows that a group of Maidan protesters were shot and killed and wounded. And this very brief fragment was shown as evidence that they were shot by Berkut police or by government snipers. Even so, I got this entire video, Belgian video, television video of this that they filmed from the Hotel Ukraina, which was about 45 minutes. And this video was presented actually and made public, not public, but was presented at the Maidan massacre trial. And this is how I found this video. And this video is very important, because it shows before the group of protesters were killed, they were looking into Hotel Ukraina. They were like they were very concerned about Hotel Ukraina. So they would look into upper floors when they would walk to front, in the direction of Berkut police. They were looking back, because they were very concerned that they would be shot from Hotel Ukraina. And then you can hear a gunshot, and you can see bullet hole appearing in T, just next to this group of protesters, and they would turn back and would shoot back to the Hotel Ukraina very loudly, saying and just waving their hands and saying to the snipers, "Do not shoot." They would tell snipers in the Hotel Ukraina not to shoot them. So this is like and this was never shown by And afterwards, this entire group would be killed and wounded. I think 10 of them of protesters were killed and many wounded from this group. And again, the ones who survived testified that they were shot not by the Berkut police, but in front of them, but they were shot from the Hotel Ukraina in the back or from the side directions. And so you have video in which they would say, that they would talk to snipers and ask snipers not to shoot them. And this is like, so this means that these snipers were not again government snipers. These snipers were again their own snipers, and they ask them not to shoot them, but sniper shoots them anyway. And this is like now confirmed even by official verdict, who stated this official verdict from Maidan massacre trial stated that at least 2 protesters from this group were shot from Hotel Ukraina, again, and not by Berkut police, and another protester was wounded from the Hotel Ukraina. And this verdict also stated this video shows that Maidan protesters were shot from the Hotel Ukraina. And again, this was officially, this was denied by government investigation and never investigated. No media would show this. Even so, I published this on my video appendix because I got this video from Belgian television, again, for my research. This is quite incredible, how easy it's to kind of manipulate all this evidence, just showing very big.
If an official verdict recognizes that that these came from Hotel Ukraina, then is there any follow up in terms of trying to figure out who from Hotel Ukraina shot these protesters?
No, there is no follow up, no, and nothing. And I do not see a single Ukrainian media report about this this content of verdict of Ukrainian massacre trial. They never mentioned this. There was not a single acknowledgement of this. So you have now total government control of the Ukrainian media because they would never report this. And there was also no major Western media reported this, with just exceptions of some brief reports in Spanish and Italian media. And there was a report by this neoconservative kind of partisan website called Bulwark, and one of the journalists, opinion kind of piece by journalist whose name is Katie Young, and she basically would still deny this. So she totally misrepresented Maidan massacre verdict, stating that there were no snipers in Hotel Ukraina, kind of that this Hotel Ukraina was not controlled by Maidan activists, contrary to all the evidence. And this is like this is what only what was mentioned. So there is no investigation, official investigation of this, and no media kind of reports about this. And this is also quite astonishing because all of this is available. And I tweeted about this. I tweeted about this Maidan massacre verdict. I translated this using Google Translation. So all this is publicly available on my website. Verdict is publicly available, but again, no, it's never reported. This is like total silence. And just give you another example. In this BBC video, which I mentioned, which shows Maidan sniper shooting from hotel room, which was occupied by far-right Svoboda leader, again, and shooting into BBC crew and shooting also Maidan protesters who are filmed running away and pointing to sniper shooting into them from the Hotel Ukraina. So this actually video kind of just ends with this shooting and protesters looking and BBC journalists looking into window on this floor on 14th on 11th floor of the Hotel Ukraina. And there is another video by Ukrainian journalists, ICTV journalists from television, major television channel in Ukraine. And in this video, the same journalists, Ukrainian journalists, say that they filmed the same sniper shooting from the same window from Hotel Ukraina room, which was occupied by far-right Svoboda party, and they say that that this were sniper shooting Maidan protesters in the back. And there is one Ukrainian protester who testified in another interview that he saw Maidan protesters killed and wounded by snipers from the same hotel window. So he pointed into hotel window, the same window which was occupied by Maidan snipers, and in a room which was occupied by one of the Svoboda leaders. Again, no investigation, nothing, and denial. And in the Maidan massacre trial, one of the Ukrainian activists who witnessed this shooting and who was filmed by BBC video, you can see him in the BBC video sitting and running away during the shooting by the sniper. He said that afterwards he was told by other Maidan protesters that this actually was shooting by their own snipers. So he said that this were their own Maidan snipers, basically shooting into Maidan protesters and journalists and BBC journalists. And later he said that he saw a sniper from another room on the sixth floor of Hotel Ukraina would wave to Maidan protesters with a hunting rifle or some kind of rifle and asking them not to shoot about snipers in the Hotel Ukraina. So this is like another evidence. These were Maidan snipers. So, and just to give you another example, in this Oscar-nominated documentary "Winter on Fire," which was nominated for Oscar and was produced by American journalists, and this was one and shown on Netflix. So this is Netflix most popular documentary about Maidan massacre. They interviewed Ukrainian and they show video by young Ukrainian protester who was presented as that he witnessed shooting by government snipers by the Berkut police. But actually in the same video which was shown by this documentary and was misrepresented, actually you can see that he was running away because he said the snipers were shooting in the back, in the Hotel Lucina. So he pointed to snipers shooting from the back, not from the front, when they actually believed that they would be shot from, but from the back, from the Hotel Lucina. But this was never shown by this documentary. And the same young protester testified at the Maidan massacre trial that he was told by other Maidan protesters that there were snipers shooting from Hotel Ukraina, and that they were shooting their own. This means they were shooting their own Maidan protesters, and this snipers were Maidan snipers, and they were shooting their own Maidan protesters. So this is one group of Maidan snipers, which was linked to far right, but there was another group of Maidan snipers, according to testimonies by and interviews by 7 members of ex-members of Georgian military. They testified that they were members of sniper groups, which was included Georgian snipers, and they testified that they shot Berkut police, and some of them testified that they shot also Maidan protesters on the order from Maidan leaders, and they mentioned top Maidan leaders, and they mentioned also ex-president of Georgia and other former members of Georgian government as giving them order to shoot Maidan protesters and police. So this again was shown in the interviews.
And they also provided them with weapons, right?
Yes, exactly. They say that they were also provided with weapons. They were based on Hotel Ukraina, and they were also based in Music Conservatory, which is consistent with all other evidence. And they testified this. They said this in Israeli television interview, in Italian television interview. They also did this in testimony to Maidan massacre trial, and one of them was actually admitted. His testimony, video testimony, was admitted for Maidan massacre trial. So this is like, and so their identities were confirmed. This is not just fake actors, as was stated by Ukrainian investigation and media. They were actually real. They gave their real names, and they said that they were brought to Maidan massacre before, a few weeks before, and that they used false names and false passports, and they kind of to enter Ukraine and then leave Ukraine. And again, so this is again never investigated, no media reports, total cover up. And this is, and they testified that there were also snipers from Baltic states and so on. So this is like, and they also mentioned one former U.S. military member who was sniper, and they named him, and they said that he was given instructions how to shoot from to Maidan snipers, to them in particular.
So you mentioned the media blackout on all these kinds of stories, and I believe in your interview with Consortium News, you also mentioned how you have been personally affected by this sort of censorship of Maidan and what truly happened, where your property was seized, right, and you were academically censored, and there was a bunch of ad hominem attacks. Have you ever personally come across this sort of effort to, like, such a consistent effort to undermine a very specific story? And do you see like the difference in maybe in the age of like modern, the internet, and media and stuff, where instead of maybe the typical maybe jailing of a dissident or book burning or something like that, this sort of omission kind of reporting, omission based reporting, and this sort of tactic to personally attack people like yourself who are actually doing the work to find the evidence? Have you ever seen that before? And can you go into maybe how you've personally been affected by the censorship efforts?
Yes, I think you mentioned that my property and my house in Ukraine, in Western Ukraine, all my property, all land, which I inherited from my mother and from my grandmother and grandparents, was taken away basically by a falsified court decision, on which issued this decision on orders from the top. So this is information from my lawyers who had who received informal information from the judges, from the court, that this was a decision issued based on instructions from the top, which means again this was somebody was involved, and there was also a lawyer involved in this case who was linked directly to oligarch who was basically from Kolomoisky clan, who was had informal control over my region, which is called Volyn region in Western Ukraine, and actually was kind of also became a governor of this region after Maidan. So this is like, again, this is never investigated, and I cannot do anything, even so I had all the documents, all the evidence. This does not matter And this just shows again that Ukrainian courts are not independent, that they can issue any decision, even so. This is obviously was totally illegal decision, but you cannot do anything because this is like.
What was did they give you a reason for why they seized your property?
No, again, they actually the initial decision was just confirming that I am owner of this property, my house and my land and everything. But afterwards, they just changed the decision without any kind of recognition. They said that kind of just again they changed the decision without any evidence. Just the same judge would issue totally opposite decision without any evidence provided, and so they kind of just said that they I never live in this kind of this house, that my mother did not live this, and this is just this is quite unbelievable because they said there was somebody else living in my house. So this is like all the evidence. They write this that somebody else was living in my house. Even so, all my 12 my neighbors wrote a letter testifying in this style, testify to the judges. Again, this has no effect. Again, I have all the documents. Again, I live there when I was born. Kind of, I visited each year because I was doing research all the summer. I stay there. Again, I kind of nobody else lives there. This is like my house and so on. But again, they just issued decision totally opposite, and you cannot do anything. And because the politicians were involved. So now my house, basically, my neighbors who live just next to this house, and whom I pay to take care for my house. So I am in communication with them, and they tell me that this house again is now kind of becoming damaged and destroyed because nobody lives there. So there is kind of no maintenance. Again, it starts to fall apart because this is old Czech house. Again, this is quite unbelievable, and they cannot even enter this house again. So this is quite unbelievable that this can be done. But this is, I think, very common for Ukrainian justice system and for Ukrainian politics because they can do this. And whenever they have power, they can do this, and you cannot do anything. And in addition to this, there were other kind of forms of pressure, and again, kind of. They would deny me again any kind of government fellowships, and so they would deny me academic fellowships and academic positions and so on. They would smear me from all this kind of false claims. This is trying to link me to Russia, kind of. Even so, I actually was one of the first Ukrainian scholars who publicly called for Ukraine to become a member of European Union, and I did this in op-eds which published in Ukrainian media since again around 2000 year, which was way before Maidan, and I did the same during Maidan and after Maidan, saying that the only possibility for Ukraine to resolve these issues would be to become a member of European Union. And I was actually I actually participated in the first demonstration, opposition demonstration, which was held in Kiev, in Ukraine, in 1988, which was the first opposition demonstration which was held in Kiev since during the time of during Soviet times in Ukraine I think in 70 years. And this was a very small demonstration which included just few dozen protesters, and I attended this demonstration. Even so, this was very dangerous because you have some of participants of this demonstration were arrested, and for just trying to unveil a Ukrainian flag, and this is kind of again they tried to to make all the false claims, saying that this is I'm not an expert, to make this kind of determination of how protesters were killed. Even so, I look into all the evidence like videos, testimonies. I use official Ukrainian forensic experts, which were presented as evidence for the Maidan massacre trial investigation. Again, they do not care. They just try to smear me and to kind of label me. And this was also done by Wikipedia, which again editors who kind of try to defame me by basically kind of finding all the kind of smears that they could find, and kind of saying that kind of my trying to attack me and my studies of Maidan massacre, and remove any information which was kind of favorable to me, my interviews and my background, academic background, and so on, or my involvement in this kind of in this revealing the scandal in the Canadian Parliament when there was standing ovation to a member of a former member of SS Galicia division. So they removed all such evidence and presented all this negative one, like from blogs, from for instance, from official investigation saying that there were no snipers in Hotel Ukraina, that this is conspiracy theory, and they call me conspiracy theory, that I propagated conspiracy theory. This is like Russian propaganda, and this is like Wikipedia. This is and this was done by the same editors actually who whitewash and openly whitewash far right members in Ukraine, including open neo-Nazis like from Azov battalion, and also historical far right and Nazi collaborators like SS Galicia division members and Galicia division and OUN and UPA and Stepan Bandera and so on, and leaders of Azov. So they do this openly, and they are not challenged by Wikipedia. And this is for this reason again. Now they deleted my Wikipedia article, and I think this is like, I think this is I think kind of if this option to have basically been defamed in Wikipedia, or to have no Wikipedia article, this is like better to have no Wikipedia article, because the alternative is kind of is to have all this false information specifically done not to defame me. They are not interested in me per se. They only wanted to remove any reference to Maidan snipers because they have to mention my studies and so on. So they tried to kind of misrepresent this as conspiracy theory and so on, even so all the evidence was publicly available, but they decided not to include this. So they omitted, for instance, that there were more than 50 scholars who favorably cited my research and quoted, and there are quotations in their studies in peer-reviewed publications, in media publications, in which they accepted findings of my studies or wrote favorably about them. There are like dozens of media reports in Ukraine and Western media also, which favorably wrote about my studies, but this was totally omitted. And they use this like Katie Young publication, which as I mentioned, op-ed with false misrepresentation of Maidan massacre verdict, and like people like Kuzia, who actually is linked to far right, and trying to say this is like conspiracy theory and so on, even so all the evidence was available. Kind of, so, but they hid this, and these are people actually. If I know, because I study them, so I can say that one of these persons was actually activist of far right Svoboda party who immigrated from Ukraine to
one of the people that was editing your Wikipedia was an activist of the Svoboda party.
Yes, and this Svoboda party, which was involved in Maidan massacre, according to my research and even kind of according to other evidence, and he is the one who actually edits my Wikipedia article, my biography, and also article about Maidan massacre. So they now have article called Maidan Casualties, in which he actually edited. So he put the evidence about Maidan massacre trial, saying this was done by Berkut police. So this is like person who actually has vested interest to misrepresent Maidan massacre and to smear me, and because of kind of whitewash involvement of Svoboda, and he is Svoboda activist living in the US. He has no background. He's just got accounting degree in undergraduate degree, but he is actually very active politically. And so he now in charge of Wikipedia editing about Maidan massacre and my biography. So this is, and he is the same person who created several dozen websites on social media calling me falsifier of Maidan massacre, and he did this anonymously. Again, and this is, I know this is quite unbelievable. So, there was no reaction by any Wikipedia article editors and so on. And another editor who did the same, who actually was doing this also on my Wikipedia page, smearing me with like conspiracy theories and kind of claims and so on, and kind of other stuff, and also editing this Maidan Casualties article, misrepresenting Maidan massacre verdict. Even so, he knew this very well, that this verdict shows that there were snipers shooting in Hotel Ukraine and so on. He wrote absolutely different, calling this conspiracy theory and so on. And he's the same editor actually who is very active in whitewashing far right, like Azov, leaders of far right, and SS Galicia division, and Nazi collaborators like Roman Shukhevich from UNUPA. So he removes from Wikipedia basically from different articles. So he edits Wikipedia each day. Kind of, he is one of the most active editors of Wikipedia. So he spends most of his time editing and removing any evidence of against far right, against contemporary far right or historical far right, like SS Galicia division members, Nazi collaborators, their involvement in mass murder during World War II, and their kind of ideology, neo-Nazi ideology, for instance, of Azov and so on. And he smears me and other scholars, and this is done again openly. And he was identified in various Wikipedia. He was identified in various websites online as biophysics researcher. His name is Andrei Lomidze, and he's originally from Russia, and he has some Georgian background. His last name is Georgian, and so he has no expertise in the Maidan massacre and so on, but he is very active politically because he hates Putin and he writes that Russia is fascist state, and so he defends all this far right in Ukraine openly, and even so he again has no background in this academic background to be expert, and he smears me and so on. And he does this together with far right activists, and he knows this. And again, and there is no kind of reaction from any other Wikipedia editors. They accept him and such editing from him and far right Svoboda, and there are other ones who are doing the same. So this is quite kind of revealing, quite unbelievable that they can do this again. So now they deleted my Wikipedia article, and I think this is also very relevant because one of the protesters who was killed, and according to verdict, he was killed not by the Maidan forces, by Berkut, but he was killed from an area which was controlled by Maidan opposition at the time when he was shot. Actually, he was editor of Ukrainian Wikipedia. So you have one of Wikipedia editors who was killed, and this evidence, there is no evidence at all. They remove all evidence. They remove every.
So the guys that are maligning you on Wikipedia, they probably know this guy that was killed by Ukrainian snipers.
Yeah,
at the protest?
because I mentioned this.
But they don't even write about him in the
Yes,
Wikipedia.
they censor all this information. They remove all the references to my website. Somebody, like if somebody again, I regard Wikipedia basically as garbage. I tell students, I always told my students never to use Wikipedia for such reasons. So I do not edit any of articles. But when some people just put my peer-reviewed journal articles on Wikipedia, they immediately remove these articles. So they remove now my Wikipedia page because they had to mention my Maidan massacre publications. So they wanted to now they whitewash all this evidence, including evidence that Wikipedia editor was shot from again not by Berkut police but by from Maidan massacre from Maidan control areas, and this is like quite unbelievable because they know this because this is mentioned in my tweets, which become viral tweets. They had like millions and millions of views. Again, so, and I'm going to mention this in my articles shortly because this is quite unbelievable. And this editor who was killed, Wikipedia editor, actually was recognized as a Wikipedia editor of the year by head of Wikipedia, by one of the founders of Wikipedia. And so this is and his article never mentioned this evidence, and all other articles which are edited by this far right Svoboda activist and by this kind of another activist who is as I mentioned like kind of Andrei Lomidze and other editors who do the same kind of they do this openly, so they whitewash all evidence of involvement of Maidan snipers and consider this claim this is conspiracy theory, even so they know very well that this is kind of that actually all the evidence. They know Maidan massacre trial verdict. They know about my studies. They know that they are favorably kind of quoted by over 50 other scholars and experts, including former ambassador to the United States, of the United States to Soviet Union, including like professors from top universities like Jeffrey Sachs and like professors from Cambridge, from New York State, New York University, from other top universities again, but they never mention this, and and this is quite unbelievable that this can be done now openly, and again, and nobody cares, and this is for me, this is just Orwellian to see this.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and I mean the even the founder of Wikipedia has admitted, or one of the founders of Wikipedia has admitted that Wikipedia is now infiltrated by the CIA and intelligence agencies, and that they directly edit articles. And I mean, you can see evidence of how biased Wikipedia, because Wikipedia, I don't know if people remember this, but it's supposed to be an encyclopedia, which is meant to be unbiased. It's supposed to just give you straight information, but there's a bunch of examples of this, like the one that comes to mind is the COVID lab leak theory is dismissed outright as a conspiracy theory without any evidence to it, when I'm not saying that one side is right or wrong right now, but there is evidence for a lab leak, just like there is tons of evidence for that you've discovered yourself in your reporting. And it's kind of amazing that everything that you're telling us right now uh, contradicts with this narrative that we've been fed since the beginning of the Ukraine war, that this is a battle between this kind of despotic, authoritarian, warmongering, fascist Russia, or even some people say communist Russia still. Some people say that. Versus this kind of enlightened democratic West, and the treatment that you've received from the Ukrainian government, and also from Western entities like Wikipedia and Western news outlets. You're literally giving us examples of of Wikipedia, which is supposed to kind of represent this sort of enlightened liberal Silicon Valley mindset of a free internet or something like that, collaborating with far right Svoboda neo-Nazi party leaders to censor work that you've done that has received admiration and the backing of very credible institutions and actors and people. So what does all of this say about Ukraine as supposedly this enlightened democratic state that's superior to Russia, and also the West that's treated you in this really frankly kind of disgusting way in your work, in just a really bad way, dishonest? Has your opinion about the West and Ukraine changed going through all of this?
No, I think I wrote even before the Maidan massacre. I studied issue of democracy in Ukraine, and I published my articles and publications and presented my papers. And I said that Ukraine was not democracy. Even before Maidan massacre, it was semi-democratic, under Yanukovych government, even so he was democratically elected. But after Maidan massacre, again, and I published this in my academic studies, Ukraine become largely undemocratic, because Maidan massacre led to undemocratic and unconstitutional overthrow of Ukrainian government. So this was illegal. This was a major kind of violation of law, Ukrainian constitution, and major crime, which was never admitted, but nevertheless, removal of Yanukovych was kind of undemocratic, and the new government which came to power and became again undemocratic government with some elements of democracy still present. But afterwards, when Zelensky was elected, Ukraine was kind of briefly moving back to kind of semi-democratic form of government. But afterwards, Zelensky soon became again very undemocratic, and he tried to just took control over Ukraine, all institutions like parliament and all he dismissed the entire constitutional court. So there is no issue of check and balances. He banned all major opposition parties, with the exception of far right and some parties of Poroshenko and nationalist parties. But he charged Poroshenko with state treason. So in this regard, actually, Ukraine, according to my research, is similar to Russia. So two countries are largely undemocratic. So there is no kind of battle between democracy and non-democracy. So this is basically conflict between the two largely undemocratic countries, and which are similar in this regard. And so this is why it's clear that this is, again, the media just misrepresented this, and politicians misrepresented this for political reasons, because this is like beneficial, because to admit otherwise it will be very dangerous. And the West in this case treats Ukraine and Ukrainians not just and support Ukraine and Ukrainians not because of they want to support democracy, or they do this for any kind of benevolent reasons. This is just part of the policy, geopolitics, in which Ukraine is a proxy to kind of fight Russia. So Western governments use Ukraine and Ukrainians as a proxy to fight Russia, and that's why they fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Again, this is like a reason why West try to use this conflict for their own self-interest, for their own geopolitical interests, and this is why Western governments supported violent overthrow of Ukrainian government in 2014, also for geopolitical reasons, to contain Russia, to contain Russian influence. So this is, I think, very clear But in terms of Western treatments, kind of Western treatments and Western reaction to my studies, I think there is a big difference. And this is also very clear and very revealing. What is done by the media concerning by my Dan massacre studies and my other research, because my studies, which were academic studies about other issues, specifically about World War II, like Nazi collaboration and far right during World War II, actually received a lot of media attention. I was quoted, and my studies were mentioned very positively, were kind of quoted by much of Western mainstream media, including like Washington Post, Guardian, Associated Press, Reuters, CBC, and like Fox News and other ABC and so on, and media in many other countries, Le Figaro and so on, about kind of my studies. So they quoted my research very extensively and in a very favorable way concerning conflicts which took place during World War II, and the same applies to my interviews about the current war. I was interviewed by major Canadian media and media in many other countries based on my research and interviews about my interviews, also my research about war in Donbass, the same, and including far right before the current conflict. And I also receive a lot of media kind of interviews and coverage when this scandal with standing ovation to SS Galicia division veteran in Canadian Parliament happened, and which I kind of played a major role in revealing this, that he was actually a veteran of SS Galicia division when he was presented as a Ukrainian hero in this parliament and given standing ovation. So I found this information based on my own research, and afterwards I gave interviews to major Canadian media, also to Guardian and like French media. My studies and my interviews were mentioned also like by media in many other countries. So I think so. This is quite different from what happened to my studies about Maidan massacre, and this is quite revealing because I know from my own personal experience so that my studies are cited very widely, are quoted by mainstream media when it is politically convenient. For instance, about World War II, Nazi collaboration, and when it involves, for instance, kind of internal politics of these countries, specifically Nazi collaborators from this SS Galicia division who live in Canada, like in this veteran. But there is totally different take when it comes to issue of foreign policy, specifically far right in Ukraine, contemporary far right, and including issue of Maidan massacre, because this is a political inconvenience. This is like a bomb, because this would undermine all the narrative by the media and by the governments. And media in this case, they follow narrative which was promoted by the governments, and they are not interested in revealing actually all this evidence, even so they are aware about this. So that's why I get in very kind of blackout of my research about Maidan massacre, but I get in very opposite kind of reaction and coverage. For instance, extensive coverage about my research and about other conflicts in Ukraine, specifically dealing with World War II and Nazi collaboration. So this is also clear evidence that this is just not accidental. This is just such a pattern. So this is, I think, and eventually I believe that also my research about Maidan massacre would receive similar attention and similar coverage when it would be impossible to deny what happened, because evidence is overwhelming. The issue only about matter of time when this happened, and I think now, because of war in Ukraine, because of Russian invasion, it is politically inconvenient to do this. So I don't expect that they would kind of reveal this evidence and would admit this very time soon. But I think sooner or later this would be public knowledge, and then my research would be recognized as similar to what happened with my other studies.
Yeah, I hope that happens soon. Yeah, it's pretty amazing that the outlets that previously recognized you and used your work and recognized some of the issues that kind of lead up to what the event that you're covering that is now being censored are pretending like you don't exist to some extent now. It's very revealing. But I think that was a great place to end it, Dr. Katchanovski. I just want to thank you for spending all this time with us. We really appreciate your wisdom and your courage in doing these studies and continuing to speak truth to this matter despite the consequences. So if you want to let people know where they can follow your work and anything, and tease anything that you have coming up. Like I know you have this report coming out soon about your Wikipedia censorship. So just let people know that.
Yes, if people are interested in my comments based on my research, so they can follow me on Twitter. I'm very active. It's very easy to find my again Twitter account and any other social media accounts by just using my last name, because this is Ukrainian last name, which is not very common. So I think they can find my Twitter profile and then follow me. And I post tweets very actively about what I found, and I'm gonna post the same about Wikipedia and other issues for Maidan massacre, kind of related to Maidan massacre, trial and revelations from a verdict. Also very soon. And in addition to this, I have a new article which will be published tomorrow by Canadian magazine called Canadian Dimension. And they would this article about Maidan massacre verdict, which is again received no total blackout, basically almost total blackout in Western media, and a total 100% blackout in Ukrainian media when it comes to evidence of Maidan snipers. So this will be article which would mention all the verdict, all the evidence. I quote Maidan massacre trial extensively, verdict extensively, and also I mentioned specifically the case of a Wikipedia editor and misrepresentation of Maidan massacre by Wikipedia in this article. So this is a kind of a major publication, which will be, I think, also very relevant, because on February 20th we have a 10th anniversary of this massacre taking place. So I think that this is also a very important time to kind of raise these issues and for people to be aware of. And I think I'm also going to mention some other issues which are not yet mentioned publicly about retaliation for my research, which are also very significant. But I'm going to mention this as it as would be appropriate, because again they try to silence me, they try to intimidate me. But I think I regard this research is very important, not only because this is academic research for the sake of truth, which is I think very important, but because this is also very important for Ukraine, because Ukrainians actually the ones who suffer from this conflict, and it will be very difficult for them, many people actually, to see what actually happened, when it will be just very shocking for many Ukrainians to realize what actually happened, because they also were misled by all the media and by all the propaganda. And I think this is also very important to study this issue, because it has direct relevance to the current war in Ukraine, and to possible peaceful resolution of this war, which if people would recognize what actually happened during the Maidan massacre and overthrow of Ukrainian government, this would help to end this war much sooner, and this would avoid all the negative consequences of continuing this war, because Ukraine would be in a very bad possibility, actually in a very bad situation, because it will be very difficult for Ukraine to win this war, and the most likely outcome that the longer war would continue, the more likely again Ukraine would suffer. There will be more casualties, and without any real possibility of defeating Russia. So the issue would be again very negative for Ukraine. So I think recognizing how this war started, origins of this war in Maidan massacre would help kind of end this war, and lessen casualties and negative impact of this war on Ukraine, and to achieve possible peaceful resolution of conflict on the terms which might be kind of much better now compared to what can happen